and welcome to the Flory Models live show. Here we are on my own on the 29th of August 2023. Sorry about the noise in the background. I know it's really annoying. It should be finished in 20 minutes. It's just I'm printing off some more missiles for the Harrier and things like that. So the 3D printer is in full pelt. Anyway, trust you're all good. If we can just get a quick, you can hear me okay and I sound okay before I go totally into this one. So that would be good. Let me just get rid of a few little warning messages. We don't need that. We don't need that. I don't need an earpiece because I haven't got the others talking to me in my ear. So yes, we're all good today. I trust you all had a good weekend and everything was very well with you. Got a bit of modelling done, various bits and pieces. I know the weather wasn't exactly brilliant over in the UK for the bank holiday. But yes, it's all right. Thank you. Harrier's coming along, as I say, following on from Saturday live. Thank you to everybody who placed orders and joined us for the show and all things like that. It was very much appreciated. Went very, very well. Yes, loud and clear. All good. Very good indeed. So anyway, pushed on a lot with the Harrier over the weekend. Did a bit more to it on Sunday. Got the decals all buried down and everything. And as you can see, the reason she sort of stood like this is because the gear is all still a little bit wet, so we can get her under here. So the gear is in place, and again, this is weird because it's all movable gear, but I have locked the nose one purely because it's not a brilliant fit. All right, so anyway, we've got the Harrier down in here looking very much the part. Those decals went down, I have to say, an absolute champ. Cartograph decals, you can't really go wrong with them, as you can see, and they've conformed really, really nicely. No real problems. Got a little bit of silver in here and there that's needs a couple more run overs, I think, but generally looking very, very nice. You can see down the old intakes. Whoop, if I move your hand. So that's it. So at the moment I've literally just temporarily put all the gear into position, but again it's weird because it's all this movable gear stuff, and yeah, you don't want it to be because it's not going to be, because it's got resin wheels. But we put the gun bays on, so the packs are on down in there, a couple of more of the aerials to say we've got the gear installed onto this one, and as I say, we've got really very, very nice. So this has got a satin coat right the way over it. I've used the old, if I can find it, my favourite one for this, which is the 3rd gen acrylics matte. It's not as matte, as you can probably see, there's actually a bit of shine to this. This is their matte finish. They do an ultra matte, which is dead. It'll just kill everything. But this has got that type of sheen that I wanted. I like to have it a little bit lively. Also, it works really, really well with the actual weathering going onto this one. So down onto here, obviously we're going to be going along with things like weathering wash. So funny enough, it's going to be the Flory Models Dark Dirt Wash right the way over this. We might come in with some other shades, little bits of dust and stuff like that as well for sort of salt and watermarks. And then it's going to have oils. And the thing I really do like about this stuff, even though it's an acrylic and I prefer lacquers, is that it gives you a almost perfect canvas to work on, because what it does, it's just got that ability to be able to get all of it off if you needed to, but it's got enough bite that it's actually really nice and easy to work with. So if you haven't used it before, I can highly recommend this one. And I must admit, since using it on my last, all this year's models, I don't see myself going back to another like lacquer product or anything else like that. I haven't tried their glosses, I must admit, but I'd like to have a go at their glosses as well, because they might be nice. It's very, very thick stuff, goes a long way, and I thin this usually around about 70% thinners to sort of, you know, around about 30% of this right the way through. And also, I have to say, I'm a big fanboy of as well their own thinners for it. So this is their own thinners. It's the 3rd gen acrylic thinners, just like this. So with this one as well, I think they just work really, really well. And again, I often say that it's very easy to make everything go dead flat because it gives a better scale effect. If it's too shiny and stuff, then all of a sudden what you can have is a situation of it looking like a toy, or you just lose that scale effect. Making them dead flat, I get, but the reality is nothing is dead flat. You know, not even armour. So it's always got that sort of shine to it. And we'd say when the light catches it, it just sort of, you know, you just want a little bit of reflection, not much, but enough to, you know, sort of show its curves and its lines. And again, that shine is another part of the weathering, as I call it. So what that actually does is, because you've got the reflections onto it, it causes depth, you know, technically causes sort of scale effect, and it makes it a lot easier because your eye's moving around it. But if it's completely dead flat, it just becomes a little bit two-dimensional, and I like that three-dimensional look that you can achieve by using glosses and satins. And in the past, you would have seen me, I've even done weathering with it, where I've used the actual satin and glosses and mattes to achieve different looks over panels. So I used to do this thing about like centers of panels would be more of a satin finish, and around the panel lines and stuff would be more of a matte finish, and then on high sort of curved areas a little bit of gloss as well. Doesn't really work out as easy as it would be just doing it with weathering and post shading and things like that, but it's a great way of drawing your eye to it. But generally she's coming along really nicely. Say with the guns onto it, we've got the gear onto it. Up for this thing tomorrow will be a wash, so it's going to have the Flory Models Dark Dirt wash right the way over it, that on and off, and then we'll put the oils right on top of the wash. And that's another thing where once you've used it a couple of times you get a bit of a feel for it, because the clay absorbs the enamel thinners from the oil wash, and what that makes it is it just gives it a really good effect, because it draws the thinner out of it and it leaves the pigment, so you don't get any tide marks or anything else like that, because oil sometimes you get little tide marks and things going on. Don't get that at all, because the clay absorbs it all, so it hasn't got time to dry out and cause tide marks. So that's very nice. But yes, so anyway, she's looking very much the part. And I say for the moment, just to keep the gear out of the way a little bit, I'm sort of just sticking it on that, so it sort of just hangs out of the way just a little bit. But there we go, she's looking very much down in there. Anyway, that was what I've been up to, and also, as you probably saw in the little thumbnail, I have been 3D printing a lot. What you can hear in there, and if you want me to, I'll show you doing a little bit of basic cleanup with it, because it's going to finish in approximately 15 minutes. It'll be over, then it'll be nice and quiet in here. But I have been doing lots of this, so this is how I do them. I do them in batches of 4, and I can do 2 lots at once, so we can do 8 sidewinders. So this is a 24th scale sidewinder missile. This is how it comes off of the print bed, if you like, because don't forget it is printed upside down, so it prints it that way. And they've come out really very, very nicely. A lot better detail, I think you agree, than the actual kit parts, because I've got one here in primer, and again you've got some really nice details. Like these actual end plates, they're all individual, so there's just a tiny little bit for the actual bit in there that holds it down in there, so they are very, very nice, fully detailed. And again, you've got the launch rails down in here, you've got everything you might imagine right the way through, and they are incredibly thin. And again, proper scaled units and things, so happy of how those. So they're coming out as a can at the moment, so we got those. So these need to be painted up, and in those days I do believe they were still painted white, and they hadn't changed them over to ghost grey in the early 80s. So again, we'll be doing those. So we've got 2 of those to do, so we've got 2 sidewinders going to be going on this little lump, so that's up next. Because we're using, obviously, our own ones, we can use the decals though, which we got down in here, for the actual sidewinders themselves. So again, we can really detail these up with all the bits and pieces. So we've got all the decals can go on with that one. The same goes with the seat, because obviously when it comes off the print bed, it looks just like this. It looks a bit like one of those Alien ones where it's sort of sitting back. So, and obviously when you take it off and it's had a coat of primer, that's your seat you've actually got. So this is the Mark 10 that we've done for the Harrier as well. And again, same goes for the nozzles we spoke about before. Is incredibly thin. So these are the nozzles as they come off the print bed. They look like this. So that's it. And then again, once they're sorted and done, you end up with them looking like that. So yeah, very, very nice indeed. And again, we've got the nozzles for it and the bits and pieces. So hopefully by the end of this week, say fingers crossed, we'll be in a situation where they all will be on sale. So I will get them up on the site, because lots of people, so you will be able to buy them individually, either nozzles, sidewinders or seat, or you can have a combination and you save yourself a ton of money at the time. So that's the plan with that one. So yes. Did you use the kit supplied decal sheet, Jim? Yes, I did. Cartograph. To be honest, I was quite lucky, because this is the last boxing of this kit that we know about. So again, it's the one where it was for the anniversary of the Falklands edition one. So it was, yeah, it's not that old. So consequently, the decals were done by Cartograph in those days, and they are really, really nice. No problems at all. They went down all good. So that was all right. So Dave says that he's got the GR1 in his stash. From when he was a kid. The decals are shot though. I think you can get aftermarket ones for the GR1. They are readily available. There used to be, I think it's Extra Decal did them for the Sea Harrier, but I couldn't find any at the time. So that's why, to be honest, we've just gone with the Decal one. So these markings here are for the conflict for the Falklands, because on this side it's got the kill markings as well for the 2 daggers and the 1 Skyhawk on this particular aircraft. So that's the thing with it. But again, like I said before, if you wanted to, you could probably quite easy for things like the round doors and stuff like that, just make masks and then pop them in, you know, and do it like that for the big ones. It wouldn't be too bad doing the reds as well, and with the crosses, if you got one of the stencil sheets, you know, for doing the cutouts and that, you can do crosses on those as well. So it's not really a mass problem, but it's just aftermarket wise, you might be able to find other 24th scale stuff for numbering and stuff like that, which will go on with this particular one. So yes. In other news, Matt did manage to get away. A couple of you have already messaged me saying about, did Matt get away okay? Because obviously, if you don't know, here in the UK, they've had a bit of trouble with the aircraft flight planning system. And Monday at 8 o'clock, it crashed for a couple of hours. So it's thrown the entire aircraft flight navigation planning system to pot. So they cancelled literally hundreds and hundreds of flights. Matt's flight left at 8 o'clock in the morning. So he flew out just as it all collapsed. So he was all right. So I spoke to him earlier today, and he's now sunning himself with a nice cold beer in Corfu at the moment. So he's all good. But yes. Anyway, as I say, it's a little bit of a different show because I haven't got my psychic here to be able to sort of do stuff. So what I thought we would do is, once this shuts up in 10 minutes time now, again, I can show you about washing it and all the rest of it, how I do it, and then we'll go about, obviously I thought we could do some questions. If anyone's got any questions, if you want to do any quick demos, talk about stuff, anything else like that, it's really an open show for it. So I thought that's what we could sort of get about. But hold on to your questions for a minute, because there's a couple of bits we'll do housekeeping, and then we'll get back to you. First up, for everybody who's got on the Flory model site a pre-ordering for this lump, I'm happy to say they are literally on their way. We're expecting either tomorrow or Thursday they'll be in. So Andy's going to be invoicing you now all for your Sea Kings. I'm happy to say as well that we have got our full allocation, so we have got them all coming. So no problems with that. But if you've got your name down for this amazing kit, it is on the way. And yes, it has got recessed rivets. And yes, I think they're better than raised rivets. I'm just going to leave it there. But anyway, if you have got your name down and all the rest of it for one, Matt's going to be in contact, well not Matt, sorry, Andy will be in contact with you over the next couple of days. So if you can pay up ASAP, it just means we can get them in and out of the warehouse instantly without having to chase people up as well. So if you want to get on with that one, you can do, because as I say, that is going to be up with you. The other thing, and I might just move this out of the way for the moment, sit right there. The next big build we are going to be doing or tackling is this little lump. So this is going to be the next big video build. It's a very old kit, it's quite classic. If you haven't seen it, it's not massively detailed. We can have a quick rummage in the box, I'll show you what I mean. Alright, quick live unboxing. I think there is a review of this somewhere back in the days. But as I say, nice big decal sheet with this one, so that's good. But technically this is the old Esky kit. So in here we are greeted by, actually it's latter Esky, if that makes sense. So it's actually quite nice. So the detail is all recessed, which is quite nice. There we go, as you can see. But there's no real riveting or anything else. So what we're going to do is add all the riveting and bits and pieces to it like that. And generally, you can probably see on here, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty sharp. Have you ever seen the Italy F1 kit? Basically on a par with that. It's actually all okay. It's got good shape, it's got nice detail, so some of it's raised, some of it's recessed. It has got some riveting onto it, but we're obviously going to completely re-rivet this thing and go to town. What it doesn't have particularly nicely though is internals and stuff like that, so that's where we come along with this one. Being a Navy aircraft, what we want to do is fold it up. So for that we've actually got one of these. So we've got the wing fold set from Black Dog, which is full of chippings. Thanks. You love chippings. Are these not the biodegradable ones? I like the ones you can eat. Well, not eat, shouldn't eat them, but you know what I mean. So we've got those. Alright, and then in here we've got the wing fold set. So again, it's actually quite nicely detailed, you can probably see. We've got all the actuators and the latches and the bits and pieces, and again it's a slide-in fit. It should just slide in and push into the correct point onto these. And again we've got some of the other little ones down in here. Keep all your little bits because you can never tell which ones are broken off and not. There we go. So we've got obviously the main wing ones, and we've got, which must be this one, this is the tail brake. So the tail goes over on this one as well. So again, it's going to be in that sort of position with the tail breaker. So that will be nice once that's all done and dusted. So the idea is we're going to have this thing folded up with some of the active panels open. I'm not going to go completely all over it doing everything, but we definitely have a good few in there. See, I'm not sure what's missing and which is a piece of off-cast resin and not, so I always keep anything. But what also we've got is this one as well. So this one down here is nice because we've got the radar at the front, and then obviously we've got the bits all underneath for the wheel wells, and we've got the main area, and then obviously we've got the little bay at the back. Again, got a nice box of resin out the way. So again, there's a lot to be said for 3D printing, and I must admit I'm a huge fan of it now, as you can probably tell, but there's something about cast resin that just plugs out like that and is beautifully formed. And obviously you can probably agree it's a lot more detailed than what was in the kit. So down in here we've got the weapons bays, and then down over on these two we've got the main gear bays at the back. That's very nice indeed. And then we've got this one in here. We've got two noses, which I don't know why we've got two noses. One's slightly different to the other. Well, one's probably because it's got a warp. That's definitely slightly out of shape, that nose, so no doubt that's probably why we've got two. But again, it's very complex getting these out. It's probably easier to 3D print a nose now than it is to get it out of a resin area. Alright, so that's that. This is the front of the radar housing that we'll be using. Nose wheel well. Obviously all the various electronic bays and pods all down in here as well, which are really nice indeed. And we've got the step area on that side, I do believe. And then again, tons of stuff in here making these all up. So we've got all the lumps and bumps for the radar. We've got all the doors, the various parts to it. They're all down in there. And then last up, which is very nice because one of the members offered me a set of these, but turns out they're in the kit anyway. We've actually got the stowage bins, or one of the stowage bins for the rear as well. And again, we've got some more electronics bays, and we've got the two doors for those as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. So as you might imagine, we're going to be doing a lot of surgery to the actual aircraft as well, because we need to cut it all open to get all this in. And then at the same time as all of that, we're going to be going through and obviously trying to install it neatly and all the bits in there. We'll probably do a little bit of scratch building as well. So we'll do a little bit with all the gear. So hoses, hydraulic-y bits and pieces, all the various things. So we just stick these two in here. Got the right bag? Probably not. Alright, I'm just going to keep these separate. But again, I think the reason we've got two noses in here is because definitely one of them, as you can see, is a little bit shot. So, but again, fear not with resin. If you're not used to using resin, something like this is really easy fixable. You just put it in warm water. It will soften it. And then what you can do is actually just pull it slightly out and then let it dry, and it will go hard, and then stick it in cold water and it will lock it into position. So if you've ever got a situation where you've got something that looks a little bit mouldy, but that is incredibly thin, there's not a lot of, you can probably see it moving, it's like uncured resin. But again, same thing, warm it up, bend it out, cold water, it'll be absolutely fine. So should be alright with those ones. It'll be one of those ones where I think it'll be goody goody. But again, I do like the aftermarket like this. I do like Black Dog stuff. I think it's one of those ones. I must admit, I have my eye as well on the MI-17 with the engines and all the stuff, because that looked absolutely gorgeous as well. So yes, from my point of view, I do enjoy a little bit of aftermarket. We haven't done any aftermarket work like this for a while, because a lot of stuff we've been scratch building and doing other things with. So it's quite nice to just buy a set that is designed for it, and you can just cut it out, plug it in, and away you go. And again, we'll be showing you some of the best ways, or hopefully the most straightforward ways and easy ways to install this stuff without too much of a headache. So I know people often struggle trying to cut open kits, because obviously you are aware it's a lot of money, and if it goes horrendously wrong, you know, you're in trouble. You're going to end up needing another kit and things like that. So anyway, we do intend to be building something like that. Right, one sec, let me just see if this is finished. See how long it's got to go. We are at 99%, 2 minutes. What's it got to do? Another 6 layers. So it's almost there, then I can turn it off and it can drip. And what I'll do is I'll bring it over and you can have a look and see what it's like. Anyway, good job. I wonder how much that little lot cost. Not as much as you'd think, but again, when you're doing it as in, you know, all in, it's one of those areas. It's a lot easier to buy it than it is to scratch build it all. And I know people out there, and a friend of mine, Jelly, years ago, he actually scratch built one completely. But if you look around, especially if you go on the old eBay and stuff, keep an eye out, and obviously you can pick it up second hand as well. Although it is currently available, and that's why I grabbed it. So we did pay full price. So yes, and obviously you can talk about the F-14. That's the other thing, because he's not here. We can all now sit here and coo and gurgle about the best aircraft ever in the world. So, which is something, this tomorrow I'm going to review. So I'll get the review of this one up with you tomorrow, go right the way through it first thing. There is not going to be a PM model show tomorrow, because to be honest, they're going to be busy because they've got to get all the Sea Kings out and all the rest of it, and a few other pre-orders we've got in. So what I'm going to do is a couple of reviews for you tomorrow. So I'm going to do the review for this, and we're going to do the review for that, which is something we'll be building later on in the year. So yes, so I will get those done and sorted. I don't know if this is true. Don't flame me in the comments and all the rest of it if I'm wrong, but I am told it's cheaper to buy this kit in the UK than it is in any other part of the world. Don't ask me why. It's something to do with the importer got a very good deal and they've passed it on to us, and now obviously we can pass it on to you guys. So apparently it's a lot cheaper to buy this particular kit in the UK than it is anywhere else. Say, I've only been told that. It might not be true, but I was told it by, well, the importer. So hopefully it is. Right, that's finished. Let me just turn that off and I can hear myself think. And suddenly it's going to go very quiet. So what I'll do is I'll just let that drip dry for a minute, and then what we'll do a little bit later, we'll get it out and I'll show you a clean up, which is quite good. And also I've got a new flexi plate for it. And if you haven't got a flexi plate for a 3D printer, trust me, it is completely life-changing, because it is just really, really good for that. So cool. Right, anybody got any questions? Have you got any questions? Anything at all? We can just sit here and say how wonderful Tomcats are for an hour, but the 3D guy will be pleased that there's so much resin been bought for the S3. John will be. So yes, there you go. John's actually in there. What's this? The best three. What's this? The top 4 best aircraft: Tomcat, Intruder, Hellcat, Spitfire. Is that what we're saying, Richard, or is that just for your top 4 or best looking? So I'll be torn as well with the F4, because you know. Will I be building the Sea King this year? Yes, I am. So this particular one, not quite sure how we're going to actually do it yet. It may be a bit of a mashup between obviously the Flory Models members and doing it in the live shows as well. But what I want to do is hopefully I'm going to get the Harrier done by the latest. It'll be next week. So the Harrier will be completed and done and out of the way. As soon as that's out of the way, I'm going to have 2 builds on the go. So yeah, I've got lots of stuff, and I've got obviously things happening next month. So I'm going to be away for a week out of that. But what I want to do is I've got a bit of a hit list of kits I want to get on and do. Obviously that's one, the Viking. I've got that giant TIE fighter to do as well. I really want to do that one. I'd like to do the Sea King this year, but I'm acutely aware we're running out of time. So no, I didn't do any resin cockpit for it, because to be honest, you don't really see it. It's one of those ones, you can't see too much detail in the cockpit on it. It's got a large windscreen and all the rest of it, I get, but I don't really think it needs it. It's one of those ones. You could pop it in. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to build it, John, in 4 days on a turkey shoot. That'll be the trouble getting that one done. Yeah, an hour of greatness of just the Tomcat. We just sit there and look at pictures of Tomcats. Any idea how shipping prices have gone horrendous? Any idea of why the shipping prices have gone horrendous? What, recently? They all went mad during COVID and they haven't really come down. The only thing that's happened for me on my side of it, on the Flory model side, is that shipping is just starting to come down quite a bit for smaller orders. So if anything's under like 1 kilo in weight or up to half a kilo, like bottles of washers and that, it's getting better and better and better. So we are sort of coming down in prices now. I think like I sent some to Australia the other day and it was literally £14, which I didn't think was too bad. And again, like we said before, if you don't want to get them quickly, there is other options, and you can just go like snail mail, and it's really cheap. It's like literally I can send an entire full set of washers to Australia or like the US for something like £7, I think it is, £6 or £7. It's really quite cheap. It's just that obviously with tracking and sign for put on top, it puts the value up a little bit, and then obviously you've got the cost of the actual insurance for insuring the order as well, so that puts it up a little bit. Question. Hold on, let me pause questions on this one because we've got questions coming everywhere here. Right, okay, let's just do one over in the Flory family first. Question. For a cheapest 0.5 airbrush, the Fenga, which is the Fenga, whatever it is, 138 or the Spar Max or H&S. Cheapest is definitely going to be the Fenga. To be honest with you, the Spar Max aren't bad airbrushes anyway because they're made in Taiwan. So they're actually okay. The H&S ones are all right as well. What you will get obviously with the Fenga, and we've spoken about this a million times before, you're obviously going to get a micro air controller or a little Mac valve built into it. You've got the actual gauge on the back all built into it. It comes with a 0.4 and a 0.2 and is it a 0.4 needle nozzle sets, spares and all the bits and pieces for 20 quid. And that's very, very hard for anybody else to beat because you can buy 2 airbrushes or 3 airbrushes in some cases of like an H&S one and stuff like that. So I think really, as I say, once you've bedded in your Fenga, it's really, really hard to beat that airbrush. I would love to say that, and I did say for years and years and years, and I take it all completely back, is that I always used to say you pay for what you get. The Fenga, which is this one here, is the exception to the rule. Honestly, 20 quid for an airbrush. If somebody had said to me 20 quid for an airbrush, I would have gone, what a load of crap. You know, it's just going to be awful. But again, it was one of those ones, the guy said, you've got to try it because actually it's not a bad airbrush. For 20 quid, it's okay. And I've been putting lacquers through mine for the last, well, we said, it's got to be a year now. September I bought mine. And I am still on my original needle nozzle set and all the rest of it. And I haven't upgraded it. I haven't changed it out or anything else like that. Which one is it? It's this one. And here it is. And it is really, really nice. It just, like now, my trigger is actually really nice. Whereas before, when you first get it, it's a little bit, when you're like pushing down, it feels like you're pushing through gravel. And when you're pulling the needle back, it feels like it's like dried out bearings or something. You know, it's not a nice feeling to do it. But actually, once you've been using it a little while and everything else like that, it sort of beds in and it wears in. And what it's doing is literally it's polishing the metal. So when it's rubbing against each other, it's now polishing them. And to be honest, I did give mine a squirt of WD-40 just around the trigger and all the rest of it. And it's really, really nice. So it's very, very hard to beat it. But as I say, after a year's worth at 20 quid, even if it lasted me 2 months, it would be a bargain. You know, because if it's an H&S airbrush, I would have probably gone through at least 2 or 3 nozzle needle combos in that amount of time. And no, it's all right. So I can wholeheartedly recommend that. Don't forget, we've got an affiliate on that and I get about 30p. So, but yeah, so if I was to do it now, or for Nigel, if I were, honestly, I would go and get a Fenga. For 20 quid, give it a go. You know, you won't be disappointed with it. I know that for a fact, but honestly, it's very, very hard to beat. Look, you get an air hose for it and that's worth a tenner. So it's one of those where it's very, very difficult to sort of find a reason to go with something else for it. And especially, like I said before, if you're starting off in airbrushing, it's actually a really nice airbrush to have a go at because it's not going to break the bank. So definitely. Okay, so I watched the video on how you use the black, I watched a video on YouTube on how to use the Black Dog set for the F104. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably lots of videos out there on it. Right, okay, question Phil, since you've been using the UMM Scribers, have you had to replace them or resharpen the blade, or do you just hold their edge, or do they just hold their edge really well? Not easy to get these this side of the pond. Absolutely. No, I haven't, and I've been using mine solidly now for, God, when did I buy mine? I can't even remember when I bought mine. Bought many, many years ago, and the edges and the steel is really, really good on that. It's not a cheap, you know, soft steel that's going to blunt out over time. As I say, I don't do a ton of rescribing, and obviously I'm only rescribing styrene, which is quite soft. So, but honestly, I can say from my personal point of view, and again, this is just mine, I'm sure there's lots of other scribers out there, I've tried them all, but this is the one that works for me. Do it. I know there are a lot of money to get sent over here, and I know John's got probably one of the worst, this clunkiest systems as well on his website to do it, but he's a bit like how I used to be. We had so many items on the old website. The thought of moving it to have something that can work it all out, the shipping costs and that, is just a massive job, especially if you're a one-man band like John is. So I can totally sympathise with him. It took me 3 months to move our website before we actually got it up and running again. So definitely one of those ones where just stick with it, shoot him a message, say what you want, he'll sort out your shipping costs and all the bits and pieces, and then you can get it obviously all sent over in one. And I'd recommend buying multiple items. I know it sounds like a plug for him, but honestly it's one of those things. Don't forget, it's a bit like people who buy one bottle of wash from me and have it sent to the States. That's going to cost a lot of money. If you put a few things with it, like a couple of bottles of wash and some pigments and some other bits and pieces, it's not too bad. But if you're just buying one Scriber, it seems to be a lot of money when it will fit in an envelope. But again, there's usual things because it's an item, it's been manufactured, it's been exported and all the rest of it. But for quality wise, I can't beat it. It's very, very good. What's this one? So in the US, it's around about $12.99 service and handling charges. Yeah, again, it's one of those things. Funny, it does change every now and again. It does fluctuate, because I had a case the other day and I refunded somebody £5 worth of postage, because I think we charged them £21 postage. And as I say, it only came in at 16, and I don't know why it was that cheap, because it went up again afterwards, so we refunded them. Question, is the canopy on the Viking really heavily smoked? As some kits are almost black. They are tinted. How much they are? I think it depends, because again, this is the Viking. They did the other version called the Shadow, which came out after the Viking, a slightly different version of it. And then obviously it became a tanker in its later life before it got retired. And again, some of them seem to have a more smoked one, dark. Some of them have that sort of yellow tinge to it. I assume because it's a lot of glass, it is that thing with them that is obviously giving some tinted protection for the crew from obviously with sunlight and all the rest of it. I don't think on those ones it's the same as something like an F-16 where they are actually got the gold coat to absorb and deflect radar. Because I don't think it matters on a Viking, because let's face it, it's going to have a radar cross section like a house. So I don't think they'd worry about that. But yeah, you see some of them are quite heavily smoked on there, so you could do something like it. And again, it's probably something I will do just to make it, as I say, because I'm not going to do the cockpit, and they do have that smoke sort of tint. I probably will do it. So again, if you have a look to see how I did it on the, just thinking, which is a free to watch video, is on the AH6, the little bird helicopter. We smoked the top of it. So again, Tamiya smoke sprayed on the inside, and then just quite a wet coat and let it dry, and it gave a lovely tint to the actual inside of the canopy. So that's one on that. Hold on. Smoke on the canopy on the Viking is not as strong as you often see. It's only a slight tint. I always thought it was a slight tint. So Nigel says, yeah, he's already got the Fender Banger, and you've just seen the bigger 0.5 nozzle. I thought that would be okay. You could do. Again, sometimes there's a lot to be said about bigger nozzles. I know everybody seems to have that a bit of a myth going round about nozzle sizes on airbrush, and I think that stems from back in the day where you needed it to be as small as possible to do that detail work, and that's actually a lie. And it's something I've been preaching for years, is that you can have something like a 0.6 or 0.5 millimeter nozzle. You can still do really fine lines with it. Just turn your air pressure down, thin out your paint, and just get really close to it. Because don't forget, airbrushes work as a cone. you know, so the further you're away, the bigger your spray pattern you can get. You just get really close to it and you can go for it. And I do think that you get people and they say about, oh, you got to go smaller than a 0.2. No, you don't. If you go smaller with a 0.2, especially with acrylics, you're going to have loads of trouble with stop starting, dry tipping, and all things like that with your airbrush. Those ones really are designed for inks, for artists who do actual proper, you know, on canvas work with ink, with inks inside the airbrush and spray them. That's what they're designed. They're not really designed for what we do. And if you want to improve your flow of your paint and all the rest of it, just a slightly bigger nozzle. I think like a 0.3 is the ideal world, 0.35s. I think that's probably the sweet spot in between. I've got 0.2s and I've got one over there which is a 0.6 in there. And again, it's one of those, the more you use your airbrush as well, that nozzle's going to get bigger because it's just going to wear out. So probably now my PS 270 is probably, I reckon, more like a 0.5. Because when I did like flat coat over this earlier, I just hoofed it down and it was coming out at a rate of knots because it was just a open the taps and just spray the entire thing and put it down, and I had no problem with it. But again, it's that thing where if you put probably a new needle nozzle set combo, it'd be very, very fine. But they do wear out over time, and that's the thing with airbrushes. The more you use them and the longer they're going, the more that needle's pushing forward. Because don't forget that, you know, I won't do any symbols here, but you know how the nozzle and the needle, it closes it. So to close it, it's touching it. So every time it's hitting it and you're pushing the needle in the back as well, it's knocking against that tiny little nozzle. That nozzle's going to expand. That's another innuendo for a Thursday night show, but you know what I mean. It will get bigger over time. So yes. Right, question. Is there any difference between canopy glues or ordinary PVA glue? Good question, Alistair. I probably would say there isn't. The only thing is, like most things in life, if it's designed to do a specific job, like as you probably know, I like using the micro clear one, it's probably more of a refined product. It'll be a nicer type of product. It'll be a lot thinner and smoother than something like craft PVA glue that I use for everything else. Because again, this is probably going to be thicker, it's going to be more gloopy, where this is going to be a lot thinner and smoother. So it's technically the same thing, it's still a PVA glue. But there's probably a little bit of difference. It's a bit like buying, as we often talk about, cheap thinners versus expensive thinners. You know, what's the difference? They're both thinners. Well, the difference is how they interact with other products. So if you buy a cheap enamel thinners, let's just say you go down the local hardware store and just say, what's your cheapest thinners you've got? They'll give you stuff that absolutely stinks. It's rough cut. And it works fantastic for cleaning out brushes and just using it for various things. You'll have no problem at all. But when you want to use it with oils, for instance, it's going to be so aggressive, it's not going to work very well. Yeah, if you go down the road and you buy something like a low odor, you know, an artist grades enamels, you'll notice they don't smell, and that's because it's been refined. It's more heavily refined, it's smoother. I know the whiskey brigade will probably be listening to this, but they'll know what I mean. You've got rough cut horrible whiskey and you've got very fine whiskies that have been done and they're nice and smooth. I imagine, not that I'm saying anyone should ever drink it, but if you were, that's probably what's going to happen. You're going to be in a situation where it'd be rough as hell compared to a nice smooth one. Well, the same goes with a lot of the products that we use as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of products out there, and I'm acutely aware of most of them, which is just decanted from a larger stuff. You know, God, there's companies out there flogging screen wash, you know, and that's rough stuff. You know, and they call it airbrush cleaner and various things like that. So again, it's one of those ones where you just have to be a little bit understanding of how it works. And if you're like me, again, I've learned from my mistakes, because I used to buy cheap enamel thinners, you know, literally just store grade stuff, and I always had trouble with it. You know, when you make it up into a fine wash, or if you're trying to use it as a filter, it was always really rough. And what half of that was the thinners. The thinners just wasn't nice. It wasn't good that I was using cheap, you know, from the pound store oils either, because by the time I switched over to a proper oil, it was like night and day, because suddenly I'm using a proper thinners with a proper oil, and there you've got it where it's just flowing and it's beautiful. You've got no tide marks, it's not gritty or anything else like that, and it just looks really, really nice. So definitely one of those ones. So yes, and sometimes it is best to just go with something. And again, if you don't get on with it, look for something else. Greg says he uses PVA more and more. I've got the AK Wolverine PVA. from the PM stores, and it's great, and it dries really quickly and really clear. And that's the other thing as well, because not all PVA glues dry clear. Some of them have that yellow tint like wood glue over time. Some of them will yellow over time as well. So you do have to be a little bit sort of, you know, where you're going to be using it and stuff as well, because some of them, as I say, they're not refined as heavily. Right, okay, hold on, let me just try and keep up with all the questions a minute, guys. Hold on, we're jumping a little bit here. Right, okay. David says, hi Phil, can you recommend a primer that does not fill tiny rivet marks, such as those on the Hasegawa Sea King, please? Again, it depends on what you're priming with, because obviously if you're putting it down really heavy, you're going to flood. And what's going to happen when you flood, you'll just fill up the holes. So what you want to do really is thin that primer or put it down a lot lighter. So as you say, if you go with like a rattle can primer, for instance, and I did it with this thing. This was all done with the Sea Harrier. It was all done with rattle cans, because as I say, I literally just go down my local store, Trago Mills, for everyone down here in Devon, and I get a can of high coat, and it just gets a blast with it. This stuff dries instantly and it's absolutely fine. But if you was to put down thick, heavy coats, you would lose all the detail. So again, you do have to be a little bit careful. So if it was something with finer detail and you don't want to lose it, I would always do it through an airbrush. You know, that way you've got more control over it. But you've got to remember, when you're putting down primer, even though you've got holes and panel lines and riveting detail and all the rest of it, if you put down an even coat right the way over your model, it will fill that hole, but also it's covering the top of it as well. So the height layer should be the same. So you want to go down with thinner layers. And this is one of the things, I think, if you're new to airbrushing especially, and I was as guilty as everybody else, in the early days you do this thing about, oh, it's have a tacky coat and then I'm going to give it a massive thick coat right the way over it, and then hopefully everything comes back. And very quickly you learn that not everything comes back. So what you need to do is obviously grip a coat, so a nice dusty coat right over it, so it's just got something to adhere to. And then, as I say, you might need to thin your primer a little bit, but if you're using a ready-made one like AK's or something, you should be fine with it. But just put a light coat right the way over it. Let it dry, give it 10 minutes, give it another coat right the way over it, and build it up. So that way, that recessed detail will get filled at the same rate as the stuff on the surface gets a layer. So you're just stepping up together instead of literally filling it up by doing it wet, because if it's really wet, it's just going to pour and go right the way into it. And then again, your last coat, you should be able to do what I call the wet coat, just a quick wet coat right the way over it. And again, sometimes thinned a little bit more, so the thinners will evaporate, and then what it leaves, the medium, is going to be quite thin. But because you've got a lot of thinner into it, it gives it all time to level out. And also that thinner would eat into the coat below, and if you have got some texture, it should smooth it all out. So it's a little bit of the thing that goes with it. But I was as guilty. The thing is, if you use lacquer-based primers, as in, hold on, I can show you a good example here. So the two we got here is two of my sort of go-to ones. I've got the AK microfiller primer. This is lacquer-based. It's very thin. You don't have to thin it or anything. You just shake it up, give it a good old mix. You can see it's got a proper thick sediment in the bottom. This is a good example of why you properly need to mix this stuff. As you can see, look at that. So if you didn't mix that and you were spraying the top stuff, it'd be nice and thin, but it'll take forever to dry because you need this stuff in the bottom, all right? But this stuff is, let me just move this down here and grab something. I'll do it here so you can see. But you'll see how thick this is. So this, if I try and shake it first, all right, so this stuff this will be a little bit thick. I'll be honest with you, when I've got a little bit of primer left over, I suck this back out of the colour cup and it goes back in here with thinner in it. But this stuff is, by its notice, you can probably see it's very, very thick and it covers very, very well. All right, which is great because it will take care of any tiny little scratches and things like that. All right, whereas this stuff, if I could get this stuff to come out properly, you will notice is incredibly thin. A little bit up, but you can see how thin that is. It is a complete difference, and obviously this stuff needs to be thinned as well, the actual AK stuff as well. But by its nature, if you're dealing with primers which are acrylic based, they're always going to be thicker. the actual particles and everything else like that will be thicker than it will be in a lacquer. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, it doesn't matter if it's colours and stuff, they tend to be a little bit more thicker. And again, it's one of these things where you want your primer sometime to work at, you know, getting rid of imperfections and stuff like that. That's great, no problem at all. Then you want to use something like this because it will do the great job at it. But if you've got something with very, very fine detail, so if you're thinking of like some of the new kits down the line, like the Armour Hobbies Hurricane and things like that, you know, they got such fine detail, you might end up flooding them. To be honest, this thing, sort of very fine recessed rivets all the way over it, chances are you might flood them with something like this. So you want to thin this down quite a bit. So you probably want to thin it around about 60-70%, nice light coats. And again, let them dry totally before you put the next one on. And that way you'll go through it. But, you know, primers have always got this thing where you want it to fill imperfections, but you don't want it to fill all your details. So it's a little bit of a balance on that one, you know. So sometimes you think, right, okay, I'm going to sand and polish and everything between the layers. And that's something you could do as well. So literally, you know, but the thing is, if you're sanding and polishing, you're not sanding and polishing the stuff in the recesses. So they're going to get a little bit higher as the stuff on the surface. So again, it's one of those things. Personally, I think if you're using something like a Mr. Surfacer and thinning it yourself, that's quite a good one because you can see exactly what you're doing with it. Okay, question. How easy it is to use the AK real colours? I normally only use them with only use Mr. Hobby acrylics. I can honestly say I've been using them now for the last, 2 years, I suppose, the real colours. There's a couple of things I really love about these. One is their coverage. They cover incredibly well, better than probably anybody else's paint I use, including Tamiya, including Hataka, which are my sort of go-to ones and things like that. You can give Guns even, Guns is traditionally covers very well, but this stuff covers mega. The thing is you have to do with this is thin it right down as well. This sprays best obviously with lacquer thinners, and if you wanted to, rapid drying thinners, it is mega with. It works really, really well. All right, so that's a good combination for them. And again, thin this by at least 70%. You thin it far more than you would with anything else. And I'll tell you what, and it happens to me a lot, if you've got a new bottle of this, I usually make up a mix. I'll then start spraying it, and then I tip back what I've got left from the colour cup back in the bottle. Many a times I can't even fit it all in. So I end up with too much, and I have to waste paint, throw it away, because this stuff just covers very, very well. To be honest, the Harrier is all real colours. Well, I'm thinking about it, probably all the ones I've just done. We did a little bit different with the Beaufort, because again, that's got acrylics on the underside, but it's got lacquers on the top. But definitely when they did the Typhoon recently, Tempest, that is literally their colours all the way through as well. And again, I think they've got good colour matches. They will look really, really nicely. They did spend a lot of time colour matching and making sure the colours are all right. The other really nice thing with these ones, if you like your acrylics as well, the third gens are an identical match to these. So colour wise, you can literally hand touch in with acrylics afterwards and you can't see it because the colours are absolutely identical through the acrylic range with third gen acrylics and the actual real colours, which again, I think is a really nice bonus as well. So you don't have that trouble of doing a little bit of hand up, touch painting, things like that, and then all of a sudden it's completely the wrong shade. That's always been a little bit of a problem. So, good time. Right. Sorry, I'm trying to see what's happening in our chat. I'll have to have a look afterwards, I think, in there. Right, okay. Container costs. Wow. Do you need a container full of kits? Or are you just on about importers bringing stuff in? As far as I'm aware now, it has been for the last couple of months, container prices have gone back to roughly where they were pre the pandemic. So, you could usually get a container for anything between 1,800 and sort of 3,000 in the UK. So they're getting better, considering they were 28,000 we were quoted on one lot. So, yeah, we'll wait. Okay, question. Does anyone do colours for the Italian aircraft in World War II? I see that Italy do them, but never used their paints before. Also, I see that MRP have the range, but can't find them in the UK. I'm pretty sure, and hold on, let me grab my little Bible, wherever it is. Is it that one? No, hold on, where's my colour thing? think I've lost me. We need to move some stuff. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've got one of these, which is the real colours. Let me just move some of these out of the way because we can't move the cat in here. I'm pretty sure this is the real colour one. So the great thing is you've got, there you go, these are Italian colours. So you've got forest greens, you've got the interior greens, you've got the red earth colours. But yeah, anything with the Italian markings down in here. And I think you're okay with, but I'm pretty sure real colour do quite a few. As I say, maybe it was just those ones. Field drab. And again, some of them there may be an overlap with other colours, but yeah, there's definitely down here, like we've got down in here the dark tan, the brown, and obviously we've got the radome tan, which also is obviously the right colour as well for the colours. So there's the desert colours, I assume, for the Italian Air Force ones in World War II. So there are a few around when you look. Yeah, we got medium gunship grey, apparently is the right colour, dull grey. So yes, so real colours do them. If you go onto the AK's website, you can just type in what colours you want and they're done in there. Because that's the other thing as well I do like about the real colours one. It's pretty straightforward, you know. So yeah, by no means have I got everybody's down in here, but this is my paint chart godly thing that I've had since 2005. There you go, look. In fact, this isn't the oldest part of it, 2004. So we've got IPMS stuff down in here. I think there's a 2002 in here somewhere as well. But this is what I used to use. 2003. Look, the internet was around then. So yeah, I've got stuff even pre that I think in here somewhere, including my old handwritten scribbles and things that will be down in here. But this is my old paint chart that I used to use for everything. But to be honest, modern ones now are so much better than these ones. But this is what I used all the time back in the day for pretty much everything. We've even got model air on the back. Can't go wrong. Everyone needs a paint Bible. Okay. Right, okay. Sorry, just trying to keep up with the questions here. Phil, what's your tumbler build series last night? I have to say you improved a lot over the years. I mean presentation as well as modelling skills. I am sure I have. You should see the really old ones before I was even on camera. So yes, as I say, some of those videos are incredibly old. I think that was 2014 we did that one. So, but we got some on there, don't forget to go back to 2006. 2005, I think the earliest one on there was the old Harrier build, and I think that's around about 2003. So it was filmed on an 8-bit camera, or it felt like it. Right, okay, let me just go down in here. Yeah, have a look at real colours. As I say, real colours are do all the FS numbers and the BS numbers and the roll numbers as well, so you can cross-check with them all. Other ones as well. Is that what got? Yeah, David's pointing out as well. Hataka, they do them as well. So if you want to have a look at Hataka, because Hataka do the sets with them all in, and Hataka paints very similar to real colours. They're lacquer based. Again, you know, as you say, I've used them tons and tons of times. They're in the little dropper bottles, and again, thoroughly mix them up. These have a ball in them somewhere. There we go. And as you say, really wake them up. Leveling thinners or rapid drying lacquer thinners, absolutely loves it. Goes down, no problem at all. Yes. I was young then, that was the thing. I see the old videos and now and then. Such a young and robust Phil Flory. Yes. Yes, I am still robust, just about hanging in there. Regarding Italian colours, do not worry too much about the precise shades. Real supplies were very complicated, I would say so. again, you know, we could have an entire show on this, and to be honest, we've done them in the past. It is that thing where I think people get too hung up on the correct shade and the correct thing of it and how you want it to look, because we sort of proved this when we were doing the Harrier the other day and looking at different versions. You know, depending on the camera, depending on the light, depending on the weather, depending on how weathered it was, there's so many different variables that go into paint colours. And as I say, if you, and I wish I had that photo still. I took a photo once of a line of F-15s, E's, all say E's, so they're all gunship grey, they're all a different colour. And that's purely because the light was different as the shadow was changing. There was like obviously a cloud coming over. The ones at the bottom in the picture are in the sun, the ones at the top are still in shade. And it's a massive difference throughout, right the way through. And again, it's one of those things, you're trying to capture a moment in time with your model, so where that moment is. And I think people really do get hung up sometimes on, you know, the correct shade and how it is, because you do have to take into account a fact of like where it is, its environment, when was it painted, was it fresh out the factory or out the paint shop, or is it something that's been kicking around a long time and needs to go through deep maintenance and get stripped back and repainted. So again, I think people just get too hung up on it, and anybody who tells you it's the wrong colour, I just don't listen to them. So yes, right. Sorry, the guy's talking in that. Do you know what? I've only tried Hitaka's their own lacquer once. We had so much trouble with it in the early days because the bottles kept splitting. And we had lacquer coming out of everywhere up at PM's. So, but I think they fixed all of that now. But I tried it when we first had it with their lacquers and everything else, and it just works. It's really good stuff. It's just I just quite like the rapid drying stuff just because it suits my speed of building. I have got the slow set stuff as well, the self-leveling stuff. But you know, the rapid stuff, it's good enough. You can literally spray it and then just go, you know, and that's the nice thing to it. So if you want to, it's really quick and easy way of painting. I've painted a wing, sprayed it and then held it, spray the other wing. That's how quickly that stuff dries. Yes, and Tony was saying about being creative with colours. That was exactly the same with the RF as well, because obviously my great uncle, he was a painter in the during the war. He worked on Lancasters, and as I said, they had the same thing. When the paint was getting a bit thin, they used to mix it a little bit just to stretch it, because they hopefully would get another delivery coming in from the paint factories and stuff for the make the pigments and the colours and stuff. But sometimes it wasn't, so it would just get a little bit of something else added to it, so it's roughly in the ballpark. Saved your wrist, bought a paint shaker. I did have one, but I've lost my power lead for it. Apparently what you need is one of those vortex mixers. They're the ones, isn't it? Yeah, so it turns out the trouble we had with the Hitaka paints is that the plastic used for the nozzle, the actual bit here, this is just going back now, I think they've cured it now, but the plastic that's on this bit that you can pull off and then pops in is a different plastic to this one and that's in the cap. And what used to happen is they reacted, and then when they react they split, and that's what usually the issue was. We had a little split in these sides here and they would leak. So yeah, that's what we used to have the issue with them. But again, they seem to, well, hopefully they fix that now. We haven't had a problem with now for a couple of years. We did speak to them. This is, oh God, a long time ago now. Me and Matt actually spoke directly to, and we had a meeting with them many years ago, and we brought up the conversation. That's what they told us the problem was, and they had rectified it and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, Hitaka's got some really good colours in their range. And again, their sets, if you don't, you know, if you're not into, I don't even know if PM's got them. Let me just check. I haven't got my sidekick today. Is that sidekick or sidekick? Where is it? Okay, so I don't know if we've got the sets. I don't think we've actually got the sets. We can get the sets. We've got the individuals, which we're pretty much solid on, but I'm looking for the sets. I can't see the sets. Yeah, Yeah, because we've got lots of them all down in here, as you can see. But yes, doesn't look like we've got the sets. But if you did want them, we could probably get them. Not a problem. As you say, you've got plenty of them. If you pop over to the PM store, paint-wise, again, you've got your various ones. So you've got your AK Extreme Metals. We've got your AFVs and third gens, obviously for your aircraft, your figure paintings, your standard colours, things like that. And then you've got the AK figures and stuff, air colours. You've got your pencils, the bits and pieces. You've got your lacquers as well from old Mr. Colour or Mr. Hobby ones. Mr. Colour Aqueous as well. And again, we've got your Tamiya, got your Model Air, you name it, we've got them all. So just take your pick really at the end of the day. But as I say, with the AK ones as well, I don't know how much info we've got on our labelling ones. But yeah, I've got quite a bit of information. So you should have the either the FS numbers are all with them, as well as obviously the roll numbers, I do believe, with some of them as well. So yeah. As I say, we get restocks of this literally every week. So just bear with us. If we haven't got any, just stick your name down on the list and we'll give you a message as soon as they come in. So, but yeah, I think bang for buck, if I'm just being honest, I think the real colour ones, sorry, wrong one. The real colour ones are probably best bang for buck. I just think they last a long time. They're hard wearing. They've got a lovely finish to them. So just to clarify, if you're using the AFV ones, they are dead flat finish. I mean proper flat. If you're using the air range of them, they tend to be like a satin. So a lot nicer to work with. There you go, that's an interesting one. Steel mixing balls, crack the glass, use them in a vortex mixer. Lucky I was outside. Yeah, but was your paint inside? All over your walls. Crikey. I did, what was the other? Was it MRPs at the bottom were falling out of the jars as well? Somebody else was doing that for a while. His cane furniture is now camo. Yes, I have a look at the options discussed, and I'll get an order in with PM. Need them on his 32nd. Very nice, the 202. Is it a nice kit? Looks nice. Very, very nice. We had them in at PM. Crikey, look. Hello, David. It's 113 Fahrenheit. What's that in pounds and shillings? In the Eurozone. What's that, about 42, 43? Not good. Too hot. Never mind. Yeah, we did. We stopped doing them when they were leaking because obviously the trouble is we didn't know they were leaking unless we opened up every single box to see if the attacker sets were leaking, and we just got a little bit upset because also we were saying they're leaking and they would say, oh, we'll send you a replacement bottle, but the packaging's wrecked as well. So yeah, that's why we stopped doing them, but we can get them back in. We can get them in, that's not a problem. So Greg said about he uses air rifle pellets as ball bearings in his paint pots. Then you have to be a little bit worried because I know it's not lead in them anymore, but whatever it is, wouldn't that somewhat contaminate the paint if it's in there too long, if it's sat in there, because the paint lacquer might absorb into whatever it is. That's why they say about using like stainless steel balls or marine grade balls, because they don't rust and they don't affect and they can't be got into, if that makes sense. Pounds and shillings, that's hot, hot, hot. Phil, what version of the Sea King, oh god, hello, where are we? Sorry, what version of the Sea King will you be building? Went through the pics from Cornwall in 2008 last night and found shots of the one in yellow in action. Looks amazing. Yeah, I'm going to be doing my local bird down at Cold Rose, which is the Ace of Spades, which is the red one. It's got the red nose, grey body and the red tail section down in there. The yellow one you're doing, that version's actually coming out from Airfix next year. That's the, was it the HC3? It's a slightly different version to this one. not in the great scheme of things. There's not a million things different with them, but there is a few little ones that go with it. The yellow ones are slightly different. That version is coming out from Airfix next year, so might be sooner, but I would imagine it'll be next year now, because they tend to usually be like 9 to 12 months before the second version comes out of a kit. But that's the yellow one, which again, when we did the thing with Airfix and had a look, they've got 2 of them there, so take your pick. Yes, wouldn't the paint come out when the pellet hits the pot, Greg? Yeah, I don't think you should be shooting them into it. Right. What else have we got? Look, in Phoenix today it's 117. Crikey. It's okay, we've got a low emissions zone now in London. The world will be a better place tomorrow. Apart from it only affects old cars and not newer ones. There you go, very nice kit. Definitely improvement over the Atari. Improvement on recent Atari 1/32 scale tooling. Comes with 3D printed instrument panel, which is nice. Tubing for the engine, plus the rigging for the antenna. Oh, it's a nice touch. It does seem to be that more and more kit manufacturers now are popping in those little extras. And to be honest, it's something I did talk to Airfix about when we were having a chat with them about stuff. But to bring them out at this price point, you know, 55 quid, I still think it's an utter bargain for this kit. You know, when you start adding things in, you're adding cost to a kit. And like they did point out correctly, the user's got the option then, if he wants to add those bits onto it, either via third party or as an an add-on afterwards. And to be honest, I can get that a little bit. You know, kits are getting so expensive nowadays. If every kit manufacturer included mask sets, resin bits and all the rest of it into it, it's going to push that price up by maybe 10, 20 pounds a kit. And again, you're into that situation where it becomes really, really a bitter pill to swallow when the price of a kit is now over £100 or something, or it goes over the magic marks of 75 and all of those. So I can understand their point of not wanting to do it, because they give you everything you need. If you want to add to it, knock yourself out, which I somewhat get with that. Right, they're still singing the praises of AK stuff down there. Good on you. Right, okay, where were we? Yeah, honestly, if you've never used real colours before, I can highly recommend them. I haven't had a problem with them, and let's face it, I always have problems with anybody's paint, but I haven't had a problem with that one. Yeah, so like Jim said, he made the mistake of using stainless steel, not using stainless steel balls, and obviously just use normal steel balls. They will rust in your paint, and obviously then they contaminate. The rust will physically contaminate the paint, and you'll end up with a horrible soup. Normally, if it's in acrylics especially, they turn to glue. They go to like a horrible gel. You'll know when it's done it, because it's horrible stuff. But yes. But marine grade, if you get marine grade, and also the thing is you don't have to use ball bearings. I use, and to be honest, I have lots of them. I'll tell you what feels funny, I'm not on a cable. So every time I move, I'm like acutely aware. So what I buy, and you can do it online, if I can find them. Here this one. Here they are. Right, okay. So if you just go online, you can buy these. So literally, you just pop online and put in marine grade bolts. I think these are M3s. And the great thing with these is, the reason I like to use these, sorry, nuts, not bolts, is that one, they're quite cheap, but secondly, is because they got a hole in them, a bit like a polo, the paint flows through. The only trouble you find with if it's got a ball bearing, if it goes down the actual end, it can block. And I've done it, and I've squeezed it, and to be honest, I've done it and squeezed it, and this end part's flown off, and I've had problems with that. So, since I got caught with that, I tend to use these. So these are slightly bigger ones. So perhaps these are M2s and M3s, but these are the ones. But marine grade stainless steel bolts, and there you go. And these are the ones that I use, and that's exactly why I've got these 2 packs, is that's all they're used for, and I chuck them in. And afterwards I don't wash them and all the rest of it, but when I have seen them again, they always look like you could just give them a wash and go again. But they're quite cheap. You can buy a bag of 50, I think he's worth, and away you go. But yeah, marine grade, that's the key word to this, because if they're normal ones they will rust, especially in acrylic. I don't know what you quite do in a lacquer, but yeah, it's not so bad if you've got a pot like this, because you can get into it. But if you've got a pot like this, they're a right nightmare to get inside. So if you use one of these, I think they agitate better, shall we say, than a ball. Because a ball's like, yeah, it doesn't do much. But you get these in there, a couple of these in there, and give it a shake. Trust me, it will be mixing it up like a good one. So, but again, you can pick them up relatively cheap. I think these are just off of eBay or something. But make sure they're marine grade. Right, where are we? Question, when do you think, question Phil, when do you think to get one of the Airfix people on the Thursday show? Would be nice to hear about their, yeah, to be honest, I can have a word. He might even be watching this now. Might do. What we're trying to do, but I know they're incredibly busy and we have to get it right, is to get Airfix team on with our team. And it'll be literally like, you know, university challenge. They can be at the top, we'll be at the bottom, and we can do questions back and forth and have a giggle and all the rest of it. I did speak to them because obviously I was with them a couple of weeks ago and they were all up for it. So it's just going to be finding a moment where we can get them together and us together. And then what we do, we usually do the thing, we'll put up a shout out for your questions and we can get the questions over to them so they're pre-briefed on what we need to know and they can get the information and the answers to you. Again, we might be able to get, depending what he's working on, because I don't know, but one of the designers on as well and can talk us through the design process. So for guys who had seen the ones when we've had Pranjit on before, he's gone through the entire design process like he did with us with the Buccaneer. And all things like that. So we will get them on soon, but you have to imagine they are incredibly busy. And the also thing you have to imagine is that because we do it in the evening, most of them are giving up their time to do it. So they're giving up an evening, you know, it's a bit difficult for us, it's our hobby, to them it's their job. So to get them in and all together and all stuff like that, but I'm sure we can get them on, it's not a problem at all. As I say, one of the great things with the entire Airfix guys, to be honest, I was speaking to them earlier today, is that they are very approachable. You know, you can just talk to them and they are just like us. So, where are we? So, okay, we've got a little bit of confusion going down in here about the yellow Sea Kings, do we? So the yellow Sea King is the HC3 variant, all right, and obviously the version over here are HAS 1 and 5 and the HU helicopter utility one as well. So it's just a different version of the RAF Sea King one is very, very similar to this one that you can see on here. It's just the radar station and the various bits and pieces they have for it is slightly different. But the RAF one, the crab one, that's yellow, and obviously all the navy ones are either blue or grey or something else in between. So that's the easy way to do it. It's only the RAF ones that are ever done yellow. It's the second one out. There is differences between the kit. They're subtle, there's nothing massive, but there is differences. So you will notice if you've got both kits, it's a different nose, to be honest. It's the cowling above the canoe bit, as I call it, the boat hull, the bit up there is a lot different. Obviously the filters at the top and stuff, and there's a couple of other bits and pieces. So, but again, it gets a little bit typical because they're all different in one way or another. But yes. Right, okay, Greg's off. Bye, Greg. Right, any other questions? Any other questions? And for people wondering about the Sea King, this Sea King is literally, we're due in within the next 48 hours. We'll have them in stock. So you say anybody who's got your pre-order in, Andy will be in contact with you. You might even be doing them now for all I know, but it definitely will be tomorrow for payment of invoices. Phil, in with you on the airbrush cleaning. Only do mine about every 3 months unless it needs it. It'd be amazed. Actually, thank you for all the feedback on that the other day when I showed you about sticking the needle in backwards just to clear it out. Because we know for a fact, I must have had about 10 of you message me saying, I can't believe you just did that because I've just pulled out a load of junk and my airbrush is like new. Again, you don't need to go through the entire, rigmarole of cleaning out and doing everything with it. Just if it's playing up, yes, you need to do something about it clearly. But if it's not, do not touch it. They don't need it. Phil, what cereal was the Shah? I wasn't listening. What? Its actual number? It is. This is X-Ray Zulu 457. She's got the 3 kills. Is that one? Nige, if you were a crab, then you're a crab. There's no getting out of that one ever. I'm sorry, you just can't. Oh, there you go. So you go. His XR regiment. Look, the jokes are abound, but we won't go there. It's fine. All together now, all in the retirement family, so it's fine. Do you think Airfix will release a 1/48 Buccaneer this year? What? It's out. Which version are you thinking? Are you thinking the other version? I always say that Airfix normally wait 9 to 12 months before the next version of it comes out. So when did the original Buccaneer get released? Not sure. More importantly, what is Airfix going to do for the big news for Telford? That's where we all should be thinking now. Place your bets, everyone. Phil, where are the photos on the forum you took of the Seeking instructions? I want to look at the colour callouts. If you pop over to the main site, hold on, I should have it up here somewhere. If you just go over to the main site, right here. Don't forget, you can do this at everything. Pop into reviews. Find said Seeking. And then down the bottom, we've got them all down in here. So this is the version that I'll be doing. But yeah, you've got all the different ones down in here. So yes. And again, for people who were, I had a couple of questions about this. This particular aircraft obviously was upgraded and all the rest of it. And when we were doing a live show, we did talk about the date it got done, because obviously the tail, obviously this is where it's got the 5-blade tail. And then obviously at this point it got changed over to the 6 when it got the upgrade. Obviously you've got the hump on the top, you've got the big one, and you've got the little thimble one as well. When those dates are they converted them over, I don't know. But as I say, they're there somewhere. Yes, you will see them. And obviously there's lots of lumps and bumps get added as the actual aircraft made its entire thing. But for people who don't know, this is the same aircraft, 666 Damien, through its entire life history from 1970 to present day, because currently this aircraft in this scheme is privately operated by a private company in Portland, and they do training, which the Ukrainians were there, I don't know if they still are, learning to fly the Seeking and operate it as well. So but yeah, lots of things on that one. So again, it's one of those things, it can be a little bit of a minefield. Just, put a pin in a pad and pick a date and go for it. Right. Yes, Tom, we're going back to the airbrushing thing. So what we were talking about was that people over clean their airbrush and they strip it down each time, and then they have problems because they put it together and it doesn't work. And like I always say, is that at the end of the day, it's a tool, and it's just one of those things where you don't need to fully strip it down. Literally colour flush it, take the needle out if you want, but you don't need to take it apart every time to clean it. And that's literally what I was getting at. And I showed a little tip about just taking the front end off, putting the needle in backwards and looking at the junk that's on the end, because obviously your paint's got to go past that to get to your nozzle, and your nozzle can bung up and that could cause paint clogs. And it was just a quick, straightforward push it through, clean it off, put it back together, and away you go. That's really what we were talking about. It's just that I've had lots of members as well, and over the years probably hundreds and hundreds of people, you know, and I've even had people send me their airbrush and say it's not working, and it's usually because it's got something that's been moved or adjusted or something in there, a seal or something, and it's because they're constantly taking it in and out. And I would say mine, I even leave paint in mine overnight and come down the next day. I'm lucky I use lacquers. Obviously you wouldn't want to do that with acrylics, but with lacquers, just put a little bit of lacquers into it, wake it up, blow it through, good to go, straightforward spraying again. But I never strip my airbrush, and to be honest with you, the only time I ever see me stripping my airbrush is for you guys when somebody asks about how does this work or why isn't this doing it, because I can then get mine out and show you. But day-to-day running, I do not ever strip my airbrush. You know, it's one of those things. And again, I think that may be a reason people go through needles and nozzles as far as they do, because again, it's that thing, you take it out, you know, you've taken the needle out, you could slightly bend it, you know, not saying you would do, but just by taking it out, sometimes just pulling it out the back, you could actually affect it. That's why they do say good practice is to pull it forward, you know, so that way you're not pulling it out and dragging it down the side of the barrel where the actual needle can bend a little bit. Trouble is, next time you put it in, that bend pushes onto the nozzle and it either gouges the inside of it or can split it, and that can cause trouble. And it might not do it every time you take it out, but I can, you know, you do it 3 or 4 times a week and you're taking that needle in and out, you're pushing it. Every time you seat that nozzle and you give it a little tap forward, you're opening the nozzle a little bit, which can affect everything and so forth and so on. So that's all we're saying by it. You just, you know, don't play with it. It's fine. It's a tool. It'll just be fine. Just go on with it. It'll be good. But a lot of people do like to strip down and clean after each airbrushing thing. I would say if you just want to do good practice, flush it through so it's blowing through clean onto a bit of paper towel or something. As soon as it's blowing clean and all the rest of it, you just take the needle out the back, clean off the needle, make sure it's all nice and dry, and then either store it separately or just pop it back in. Personally, I would put it back in, because then the seal you've got here at the back, you know, which is probably living about here, all right, that stops the paint coming back. If it's got a nozzle onto it and it's a bit like, you know, it's just sat there, it's fine. It's not having to, you know, it can't expand and it certainly can't contract. But obviously if you're using lacquer products, they can a little bit, even if Teflon or Kevlar O-rings will do it. But if the needle sat there, it's keeping it exactly where it wants to be. You might get a little bit of needle bite, as I call it. So when you go down and you push down and you pull it back and nothing happens. But like I always say, you just literally whip the back off, and with a little bit of thinners in there, you know, you just let it come off, tighten it up at the front, pull it out the back, and then just let it come forward, tighten it up again, pull it back, and then you let it off, and then hopefully the needle pops out and you're good to go, you know. And that's literally it. But you're just looking for it to be nice and smooth all the time. But say I've got some dried stuff on here, it's not very nice, you know, but again, clean that off first, then pop it back in, and you should be absolutely fine with it. But you don't need to take it apart like a lot of people do. Oh, is that the one down at Boscombe Down? Well, she is technically a sort of ace. So it's the one at Boscombe Down, apparently. At least she was kept, which is nice. She's not languishing in a desert somewhere, going a bit off. Yeah, that's it. Extra Decal are releasing an absolute ton of decals for Sea Kings, as you might imagine, because they tend to do that one. Right, okay. Josh says, Phil, which affordable F35 Lightning in 1/48 scale would you recommend? Ooh. Again, you're a bit sport for choice now with everything, but actually I think the Italeri one, you know, 48 scale, that's not so bad. I take it you mean a B. Are you thinking about a B? Because obviously that'll be a difference. What version do you want? Do you want A, B, or the C? Because now, well, Trumpeter now, you can do them in 30-second in all forms. Obviously you've got the big 30-second scale for the A with the Italeri. But I think the Italeri B, if you're talking about affordable and bang for buck and all the rest of it, I don't think that's a bad one. It's quite nice. Obviously, you know, a lot of people say about the Tamiya one, it's a beautiful kit, but there's so much detail in that you'll never see, which is always a problem with it. What's that? The 2B is out now. Which one was the navy one? It's the RAF one, isn't it? The Buccaneer 2B. Which one's the 2B? Let's have a quick look. X. I don't know if it's actually out yet. I know it's a pre-order. Oh, maybe it's out. So which is the one we've got? Hold on. Max PM. Just check. Hold on. Let me just check. So we've obviously done a bit of a thing with Airfix at the moment, and we've got tons and tons of Airfix in. Which is selling very well. Yeah, so we've got the S2C, but not the B. So I don't know if it is actually out yet. You do have to be careful online because people do put up saying it's out and it's not actually out. Yeah, most people have got that listed as pre-orders. I don't think it's actually out yet. I know it's due out soon. Just double check. Hold on. I need Andy here for this. Andy's my usual person for this. Yeah, the only one, obviously the 72nd one is out, but not in 48th yet. It's not actually out yet. But hopefully it won't be long. Right, okay, cool. That's what I heard, David, but I didn't like to say that. David is quoting me saying it's at the end of the year. I've heard it might be out for sort of Telford time. Do you reckon it's going to be a Jaguar this year at Telford? It would be nice if they did. I must admit, that would be absolute mega if they did that. Hello to Peter. Mr. Oxley's in the house. Where are we? Hold on, I've lost where I was in my questions. If you've asked the question. Yes. Yes. I was, to be honest, I'm hedging my bets that the Buccaneer will be out for Telford. I imagine that they're going to have it at Telford. It will go on sale. Boom, that's it. You'll be able to get it. As soon as we find out a little bit more, because of the company with PO Models, we are privy to know when things are being released and all the rest of it. But that's all subject to change and moving, so we don't like to go around and say it until we've got a firm date. Because obviously we get lists and it says due out November, due out September and all the rest of it. Those do shift, and we've been stung before, so we tend to keep it a little bit, a little bit to ourselves until we've actually got a firm date, because we don't want to do pre-orders with people and then they're sitting there forever. Well, Josh, I'm with you. I quite like the F-35. I think it's one of those aircraft that I know everyone says it's boring and it's plain and it's got no looks to it and no personality. But to be honest, it's nothing different to an F-16. Because an F-16, everybody uses them. If you've ever been to any of the Tiger meets, you'll know how boring they are these days because it's just F-16. Now it's going to be F-35s, So, but it is. In some ways, though, once they get a little bit used and stuff, they start to get their own personalities. But, it's the future at the end of the day. We're hoping for a 48 scale Jag, a Wessex or a Tornado. That's the obvious ones, I must admit. I'm surprised they haven't gone for a T2, a Hawk T2. Because obviously got the T1. They could do a very nice T2 because it's current. There's a few exported as well. You could do things like that. I don't know, I just think it would be nice. Wessex would be my dream. Having done obviously the 32nd scale Wessex, that was one of my favourite builds of all time. It's one of my favourite helicopters as well. It's just a cool thing, full stop. But a Jaguar, very close to my heart as well. As I say, built the Kitty Hawk one years and years ago. and it's an absolutely cracking kit. Be really, really nice to see that one come back. So you never know. Fingers crossed, somebody might be taking up their molds, and we'll be all right. I think the problem people have with the F35 is because it's just one colour all over, isn't it? It's quite boring from a colour point of view, and without any colourful tails and markings and stuff like it. Unless you're going to go with an evaluation and test squadron, there's not a lot of markings on them. But I think, especially with the B, if you open it all up, it will like quite cool. Or a Puma, yeah. Matt will have a little bit of wee coming out if that happens, if we find a Puma. So, yes. Cool, very nice. Yeah, I imagine we will see the Buccaneer for roundabout Telford. I'm putting my money on that one. I'm going to say November, so it's out for Telford. I imagine they've probably got something big up their sleeve because they've been a bit squeaky recently. I know they were squeaky about this, but this was 9 months in the making. But they're up to something, so I imagine there will be something coming down the line, which will be quite nice for Telford. Yeah, I think the Hawk T2, I think that's quite overlooked. It'd be nice to see a nice one in sort of 48 scale. Obviously, you got the old Kinetic redone by Revell and all the rest of it for the in 32nd, but I think actually it's pretty much overlooked. What's that? Crispy Nugget said 100% true. I tried to buy some VMS Smart Mud this morning, and it said on the VMS website it was 10 million shipping. Wow, that's expensive. That's an expensive bottle of mud. Available in grey with grey markings. That's probably about right. Yeah, I think the trouble with the Herc is, to be honest, and I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, clearly, because they're obviously being a Russian company, but the Zvezda one isn't bad at all. It's got some issues and some fit bits and pieces and all the rest of it. What amazes me is Zvezda didn't actually get the rights from Lockheed Martin to do it, which is what, Boeing these days, whoever it is, to actually get any licensing for it. And they haven't done for any of their models. Now they get away with that, it's beyond me. Yeah, trouble is, Tim, I don't think they'll do a Wildcat as in the helicopter Wildcat because it's operational, and you think Airfix, apart from two notable ones being the Lynx, but then it was in its twilight era when the Lynx came out, never have actually done an operational anything. Martin, I spoke to them about doing a 48 scale Wasp and a Scout because I said to them, surely you get two kits out of one mould, and I was told categorically they've tried it, but it doesn't work because there's so many differences between the Wasp and the Scout. It's not just a case of like they did before and you just like take the wheels off and put skis on it. That's very, very basic. Apparently it's too many subtle changes to be able to do it, but it was looked at. So but I think a Wasp would be good. No, David, unfortunately I was supposed to actually visit the boneyard in Tucson and that in Arizona. We did a bit of a thing going back many years now. We were going basically from Vegas, Phoenix, and then over to LA, and I was going to take a bit of a detour to go and see it, but things just didn't pan out in the end. Right, okay, so Phil, question, slightly off topic. Czech model maker CMK just released a 72nd scale model of the Titan submersible that recently imploded. Bad timing, your thoughts? Honestly, how many of you are going to rush out to buy that kit? That's one of those weird things which I'm sure is done more as a publicity thing than actually a commercially viable product. Go on then, hands up now, how many literally are now going to go off and buy that? And then how many are going to make a diorama? But bad timing. I think it's a bit too soon. We could do it as a memorial, I suppose. But I don't know, I think, yeah. Yeah, I just think it's bad timing. It's a bit too soon to release it. I think it would be, it's one of those ones where, it's in 70-second, it's not going to be that big either. It's only about this big, isn't it? You just need a 40-foot Titanic to go with it for your diorama. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, most people are saying they're not buying it here. I have to think that's probably more of a publicity type thing than it actually would be to, you know, as a commercially viable. Because how many of us build micro submarines for billionaires as our chosen subject matter? Probably not many of us, you know, and then one that's actually had a disaster and people have been killed in it as well. So yes, everyone's saying no. I don't. Yeah, I must admit, I think it's probably a little bit in poor taste. I think it's probably a little bit of a publicity thing. Far too soon, put it like that. And it wouldn't be so bad if they had lots of them and it was just one that went, because you could think, well, they've got other operational ones doing other jobs and various things. But it seems it was like, you know, it was just one of that particular corporate group stuff that clearly ain't going to be doing it anymore, you know. So I think that's just a little bit bad timing. Let's face it, this hobby's full of things like that, and sometimes I wonder how it ever gets past things, you know, like, yeah, they sit around a table and they go, right, what are we going to build next? Well, why don't we do the Titan submarine that just imploded, killing everybody on board? Oh, that's a good idea, let's start. How does that conversation ever happen? It's either that or I'm clearly on a different planet to everybody else. So, you know, I think it's just, yeah, poor taste, wrong time, and probably a publicity thing. It's a bit like other said manufacturers. You know, I don't want to start it all up again because it clearly took a while to clear last time. But the amount of hate I got about when I said about the AK interactive book about the Holocaust and the handprints and scratches in the wall, and I was like, that's totally bad taste and just wrong and everything else on every level. And, you know, I got a load of hate off of that and I was agreeing with everyone. But again, it's like, how does that ever get past a thing? There's certain things you don't need to do. I totally agree, Richard, but I won't read that out. Yeah, Titan want that big before or after. Definitely not. Space shuttles, yes, we need more of those. That would be nice. I can do a nice new one. Is it not that cheap either? I must admit, it was really expensive, and they're really going to be shooting themselves in the foot with that one. Yeah, but then again, the trouble is, like they do say, and it is true, because hell, I've had enough bad publicity over the years with various things I've said. There's no such thing as bad publicity, because people who've never heard of you will come and have a look. So, but yeah, people do. There is probably lots of people who build all different types. But I think what the world needs is more space shuttles, definitely. And SpaceX, yes, David, that's a good one. I think the world needs SpaceX, you know. Because obviously you can do 3D printed ones, but it would be nice to see, and I'm sure Mr. Musk would quite happily do a deal, because it's good promotions for him and publicity for a company to jump on board and do, you know, Starship as well. That'd be a cool one. So, anyway. Right, okay guys, look, we've gone over our allotted time. Shall I just show you very quickly the 3D print as it's come out? I will quickly grab it and you can see what it looks like when it comes out of a printer. I'll just get my gloves on and I'll bring it over. Hold on. So let me just grab these a second. One. Sorry, Peter, wrong colour. I've got purple. So, biggest problem I've got is the magnet is really, really strong. Ugh. So here it is. This is what they look like, fresh out the 3D printer. It's been running for 7 hours to do this lot. So yes, there they are. We have the build plate. I've got a magnetic build plate and it is absolutely perfect. Really, really good. So in a minute I've got a tank. We put it down in the tank, it goes in like that, and then it'll washes all the loose resin all off of this. And then obviously I let it air dry. And if you're getting into 3D printing, one quick bit of advice. When you're doing really thin stuff, it actually ripples. Hold on, I'll try and touch this somehow. It actually ripples. If I push this in, I can deglove. And it looks like, oh, that's a horrible job. If you let it air dry, the molecules realign and it straightens itself. So like these, to be honest, is what these all are. These fins at the back, like down in here, they actually look quite wavy. But I say when it dries, it's okay. So you let it naturally air dry so all the moisture's off before you cure it. And when you cure it, it'll lock it in that position and you'll be good to go. But yeah, to do that, it's just taken 7 hours. So yeah, that's all right. But they've all come out good, which is good. No fail prints for a while, which is another bonus as well. So if you're getting in 3D printing, prepare yourself for fail prints because that's going to be a nightmare as well. But anyway, these will all be on sale on Friday with any luck. So you'll be able to come and get those with them. Right, okay, we will leave it right there. So no PM show tomorrow, but I'm going to have the review of the Tomcat up with you. So that'll be up for tomorrow with you. Members, we're with you Thursday night live. We've got a special show for you on 7:30, so we'll be on with you then. I'll be up with you with the next part of the Harrier on Friday, and then we'll probably have on Friday as well the Star Wars Bad Batch ship. I can't touch anything, I'll get resin over it. We'll be up with you as well. We'll get that review up there. So still loads and loads to come as well on this particular one. Don't forget, if you do need anything, PM Store is still operational, even though Matt's swanning around on holiday. So just pop over to the store in the new arrival section. Obviously, we've got the usual bits and pieces in there. Might change over the week. We're out of stock of a lot of stuff. This has gone crazy wild. But again, we'll hopefully get some more stocks of that lot in as well. And then over on the specials, it's still being updated all the time. So we're down in here as well. We've got the gorgeous 48 scale Hasegawa. So that's got is the G2 with the big cannons on it as well. So we've got that one and all the others. And again, as it sells, it gets replaced by something new as well. So if you want to grab any of those ones, you can do down in there. Plus the fact we've got all your other tools and paints and glues and all the other bits as well. So if you want to grab any of those ones, you can do at any point. Lovely to see you this afternoon. Sorry it's a bit boring because it was just me yapping, but hopefully we had a good old convo and a chat and we can do it again very, very soon. So till later everybody, happy modelling, take care, bye.